The trends of the community over the years just fascinate me because, yeah, in the early days, everything was about making, like, it was so important to keep grinds tedious. That, like, we have to keep things clunky and difficult and kind of gatekeepy a little bit. The trends have moved on so much, though, and one of the fears of some of those more quote unquote purist players is the easy scapification of this game. And just we're heading down a path similar to what they remember, RS3 going down. Do you have any thoughts on these trends? Do you worry occasionally about the overall community sentiment on trying to remove these tedious parts of the game? Do you want to see the game kind of maintain its old school feel where things are just a little bit clunky? Or are you kind of happy with how the community is navigating this whole easyscape situation that it feels like we've been in for years now?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic of conversation, and it's something that we've definitely talked about internally. And I think the biggest thing is that it's incredibly inconsistent as well. I think like what you'll find is like um, an individual's player perception of a grind will change based or not whether they were lucky or unlucky at it. The grind is completely fine if I was lucky or average, but it was terrible if I was dry. So now I'm petitioning for changes because I'm dry and it's horrible. But that also like is a reflection of how the content ages as far as like time invested into it. Um, you could like your first 2 days of doing a piece of content, you could be thinking this is the best content in the world, but it's really got sort of dry and stale, at hour 50, at hour 100, etc. And I think that's something where like very few players maybe even experience what the extreme ends of that are going. I mean, if you look at drop rates, we have an RNG based game. We are literally like dictated by what are maths and statistics in a way. Someone will go 10 times dry for a drop in a place from time to time. It's very unlikely, but it will happen. And players have gone even rarer than 10x. So it's like, obviously, like very recently, we saw that whole trends of like asking for like drop rate protection and stuff and all this stuff. And it's a very complicated thing. And there might not be perfect solutions either because there's like economy and all these things to consider. I think the longevity is part of the game, but I think it can be really bad when it's done to extremes, if you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean.
Yes.
Like it's a very long form game where like even just going back to the original Gower's philosophy where they didn't think that 99 was like a realistic thing to aim for. We're just going to make the XP so high and people will always be able to make progress. Um I think that kind of like I think it's always important that you have another grind in a way. Do you know if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that this is what this game is built on. It's like it's endless goals. I totally agree.
So I think that's an important aspect. But as far as like trends towards easyscape, it's like I think my personal opinion is always it gets very dangerous if you just if the if it's sort of like players ask for this and your response is sure, why not? And I've always kind of been of the opinion that it shouldn't be just sure, why not, as like I guess we'll do it because I can't see a reason why not to. I would really push for us to be doing the most important and biggest impactful changes where we're instead challenging them to go, sure, but tell me why. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure, here's a good reason to do it, right? And make it like a great thing to be doing. It's kind of that like feeling of don't do like 100 meh things that like could have been left either way, but maybe like doing 15 great or amazing things just has a bigger impact to the actual players, and just for the health of the game as well. Because I think that like I've seen the sentiment among high level players, especially, or like players who do commit themselves to completing a lot of content. It's just like, well, content gets easier over time, so the best thing to do is to not play the game. And I think that's I think it's like a bit tongue in cheek in a way, where it's like, of course, like you should just invest time in the game because you're always making progress. You're not making negative progress, but I think there's an element of truth to that. And players will bring up the train track meme, when it's like, oh, it should be bad because I did it, and it's like, well, it's actually just way more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Um, I think that like a biggest example would be like, oh, like more and more content is getting really good with a T-bow or a shadow or something. So let's just like 10x the drop rate so everyone has them, and then you've lost the idea of what a mega rare is, right? I think for me personally, an MMO has always been about flexing the achievements that you've earned. And sometimes that means that like you went out and did something that other people looked at and went, nah, man, that crosses the line for me. And then you look at someone and go, damn, that's actually pretty impressive that you did that. And we probably just need a good mix of achievements as hell. There need to be a lot of things that are attainable, some things that are a bit more out of reach, some things where it feels impactful that you go lucky, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think like that's kind of harkening back to what I talked about earlier when I was like, you need to create that diversity of experiences. Like, I couldn't remember anything about my Cerberus grind and my Iron Man because I think I got most, like, all three of the boots in like 3 or 4 tasks, like roughly on rate, but didn't really think about it. But by hell do I remember that I got my bludgeon on like, was it like 1362 KC or something around that? Because like it was just such an experience at Sire, right? And it's not like I'm sitting here being like, oh, like there should be dry protection, and you know, I've gone through the thoughts as a player: is my account bugged? Have I done something wrong? Did they turn off some of the drops on my account because it just doesn't feel likely? I mean, like I swear I've done like right now my account's like 1600 Sire and has like 6 unsired or 7 unsired. It's like actually atrocious. But like those are the experiences where like I had that experience and I had the 26 KC bow. Like I can't really complain about that either. So
those are the perks of being a JMod, right? Just turn on the little RNG switch real quick before leaving the office.
Hey, I had 2 T-bows on my Iron Man before I became a JMod, so I can't really say much. Like I got one at one at 26 and one at 56 or something. It was actually stupid. Oh my god. Honestly, like if you want to see a T-bow, do a raid with me because I just see them. Like I just get them. You'll never get a T-bow from me, but you will see the drop. Because like in what was it, in the recent league, like I think I had 40 purples and 7 or 8 of them were T-bows.
Jesus, man.
Like I don't know. Like I just apparently am a magnet for T-bows. But like I think that's part of the fun when like you can have those experiences in your games. I've gone on a bit of a ramble, a tangent. Like I'm sure someone's gonna reply in comments and be like, "Oh, so Mod Husky endorses that, you know, it's okay for an Iron Man to get his Blade of Sildor at 3000 KC, right?
Yeah,
that's good for the game." But it's like, I think the thing I worry about is that like if you create like this super fair system across the board, it's not special anymore. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like not. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, and I'm glad you brought up the CG example. I think that's what really hits home for me is when I'm streaming and some more casual player pops into the stream and says, "Hey man, I'm really struggling. I just hit 1900 CG. I've been at this place for 18 months. I can't get my BOFA and progress with my account. Do I just de-iron at this point? Like I just hate this." He can only play, you know, he says like, you know, 8 hours a week or something. And just like, I am so sorry. Like that actually sounds incredibly miserable. And you see that occasionally of just these kind of pinnacle pieces of content that are very impactful to one's account, especially on Iron Man mode. And again, this kind of comes back to the argument, and you hear it a lot of the time, is, well, don't play an Iron Man if you don't want to experience this absolute suffering that is inevitable in some situations. Maybe don't play an Iron Man and just be able to freely get the gear you want and play a main account, and that's kind of what you're signing up for. But I totally am empathetic with the more casual players that, you know, want to make progress on their account but just don't have the time to, and these insane grinds that people just get completely unlucky on is pretty dreadful. So I'm totally empathetic to that conversation of anti-dry mechanics and maybe potential solutions to it. I'm not completely dogmatic on how old school has been and should be always, that, you know, things can go really, really bad, but things can go really, really good. Personally, I enjoy it. I'm one of the very odd players that just has a ton of time to put into this game. Mm-hmm. But it is a pretty deep question at this point, especially as the player base continues to get older. And also one thing that I've kind of failed to touch on is just the sheer amount of content now. I mean, it's not like we're just playing a game with DKs, God Wars, and KBD and KQ. I mean, it's just we have so many places, and now there's this overall feeling of collection logging, and so people really feel like they want to get the number up, and there's more and more and more content coming out every single year, and it's just wow. Okay, what are we gonna do? In my head, I think, what are we gonna do about drop rates going forward? Can we kind of tone back, make everything a little bit more reasonable to obtain simply because of the sheer amount of stuff to go for? Or yeah, I don't know. It's a huge topic. I don't know if you have anything more to add on what I just said.
I think like that's the nail on the head, right? It's a huge topic. If there was a clean solution, we'd probably have implemented a clean solution, right? It's something that is very polarizing in the community. It's something where it's like, it's just something that's just like, if you fix this, you probably have knock-on effects on other things. I wouldn't say like we're completely like unempathetic to it though. I mean, even just with a recent update with TDs, right? Players like said, "Oh, it's stupid. It drops one bone claw at a time." Like, and it's like, well, that's kind of the idea. It's like the visible vestiges, right, from DT2, where we're kind of saying having to hit something at half the drop rate twice is way more likely to prevent dry streaks. You know?
Yeah.
And it's us trying to experiment with that kind of thing. I also think that like some of the stuff like guaranteed purples can be really like, I've seen this like a thing, or like guaranteed like next drop. Like imagine it's like, okay, I'm always gonna get all is it 8 or 9 of the drops from TOA in succession. So you know your next one's gonna be a shadow and stuff. And then like I know it's like cool, well this is just mains only, but you run into problems where it's like people want to be like, people are more likely to raid with you because they know you're due a shadow kind of and want to split.
Yep.
And you end up with all these weird things. Or it's like, maybe it's the opposite, right? Maybe I know my next 2 purples are going to be Light Bearer, Fang, and maybe a Lindis Ward. Like, you know the next 3 are guaranteed. So like, it's just never worth doing that piece of content because you know you need to hit 3 bad drops before you can see a shadow again, right?
Yeah.
It definitely gets like so messy so quickly. So yeah, I mean, we're trying to experiment with some things. I think like some bad luck protection, like I think like Perilous Moons is quite harmless, where it just kind of says like, you'll get like at least the set in order. Or like you can't get duplicates of the same set, I think it is, or maybe I can't remember exactly how that works. I think that stuff can be harmless, especially when it's like a smaller piece of content. God, this is controversial. I am less empathetic to Iron players, and that sounds stupid, right? That sounds like, but they're the ones
Totally
who deserve
fair.
the most empathy, right? But I actually think I have this theory. It's like a personal theory, right? That there's 2 camps of Iron players, and I think people can start from one and move to the other. And it's something where like, so I'm the kind of Iron Man who loves fishing, getting their own food. Like I enjoy farm runs and the collecting my massive stack of potions, and you know I'm going to use them where I think it's best, and I'm going to ration my supplies and consider like using a downgrade to a piece of content because, you know, like blood runes are valuable. Why would I use a Sang? I'm just going to use a Toxic Trident at Zulrah and stuff like this, right? And I think I think that's how a lot of Iron players start off, right? It's very like, oh, it's self-sufficient, I'm gathering all my stuff. And I think that what tends to happen is you've got this other camp of Iron players who I think kind of just want to play collection log mains. Like, they just want to get all the drops for themselves before they use it. And then, like that's the game mode they want to play. So for some of these players, especially like if you're a maxed Iron Man, I think some Iron Men will like start off being, yeah, I like it self-sufficient, but like are at the point where, especially if they've been a maxed Iron Man for a long time, it's like, I'm like, you know, 120 mil farming and 80 mil herblore, and I've already done this, I've already proven it, I got the 99, just let me get as many supplies as I want so I can just PVM, right?
Yeah.
And I think like either it's 2 different players who just have different goals, like just the PVM focused Iron Man who doesn't want to care about supplies anymore, or maybe they started off as one and they moved to the other. But I think like I've definitely seen like this in like different camps of like Iron players, and I think that yeah, so like to like someone who's like saying, "Oh, I need a BOFA to progress in my account as an Iron player," my response would probably be, as a fellow Iron, you kind of don't. You kind of don't need a BOFA. You know, like there are other options out there. It's just that I think a lot of players get focused on like efficiency and like go, well, BOFA is actually the most efficient option for me. Like before I start Bandos, I'm gonna get my BOFA and I'm gonna like 7-0 him around the room or whatever the actual number
Yep.
is, right? Um, because that's the most efficient way. But like Iron Man for years were just like gonna go get a Dragon Warhammer and use a tent whip, and it's fine, it works, it's not efficient, but like as far as an Iron account, I think the way you need to look at it is just say that you're never going to complete all your goals in an Iron account, not unless you are willing to play it as a job. So to me, it's just like just make the progress that you can. If you're getting dry, if Corrupted Gauntlet is bringing you down and you're getting dry, maybe hit up some shamans for a hammer for a bit for a few days. Take a break. Maybe just go do Bandos and like completely just like with a whip in your Barrows gear and just get a few kills and maybe you'll spoon something. It doesn't feel efficient, but like like I think that's the thing about our game is that like players get so hung up on the efficiency and the metas that like they feel forced to do something when you kind of don't have to. But maybe that's just my own personal take. It really is. Like I know that that's not a sentiment that's shared across everyone on the team. I know that's not a sentiment that's shared across every player, but like I don't know. I at least started playing Iron Man because I wanted the challenge,
Yeah.
right?